If you consume modern media, you receive one consistent, blaring message about China. It is a hostile, rising power destined to threaten global stability. But we need to ask if this constant barrage of suspicion accurately reflects reality, or if it misses the broader scope of human history entirely. Kishore Mahbubani, a veteran diplomat and scholar, suggests we have it backwards. Consider the timeline. You have Chinese civilization, which stretches back roughly 2,400 years. Then you have the United States, which has existed for about 240 years. Yet the much younger nation consistently insists the older one is managing its society incorrectly, demanding it adopt foreign political structures. This dynamic stems from a specific habit. Over the past 2 centuries, Western powers grew accustomed to telling the rest of the globe exactly how to behave. To understand China's current trajectory, we have to pause that lecture. We need to examine the specific assumptions driving this geopolitical friction. The first major assumption is that China operates as an immense prison, where the population lives in constant dread and desperate subjugation. Look at the outbound tourism data. Every single year, roughly 120 million Chinese citizens pack their bags, pass through customs, and travel abroad. And the data shows an equally large movement in reverse. The vast majority of these tourists voluntarily return home. If a population is trapped in an intolerable situation, they do not consistently return once they have crossed the border. The metrics comfortate the picture. A captive populace scrambling to escape does not match the actual migration patterns of millions of people. The second assumption dictates that true progress is impossible unless China immediately adopts Western democratic institutions. Chinese leadership, across all factions, looks to a very specific event when addressing this demand: the dissolution of the Soviet Union. When Russia transitioned to democracy in the 90s, the result was a severe economic implosion. The human cost was measurable and immediate. Life expectancy dropped, and infant mortality rates climbed as the social structure fractured. This chart compares that sudden collapse with China's trajectory over the last 40 years. By prioritizing strict internal stability, they managed a steady economic ascent that pulled hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. For Beijing, avoiding sudden political upheaval is a direct, calculated response to the suffering they watched unfold across the northern border. Pressing a foreign power to risk systemic collapse ignores the real-world consequences of instant political transitions. The final assumption is that the current Western-led global structure is the permanent state of affairs. This chart of 1799 GDP shows economic output concentrated in Asia. Viewed across human history, the last 2 centuries of Western dominance represent a brief exception. We are now simply watching the global economy revert to its long-term baseline. Western nations secured their share of that economic pie through the Opium Wars, colonizing territories like Hong Kong to force open trade routes. They established their global position by marching multiple foreign armies directly through the gates of Beijing. When European powers projected force globally, they documented it as the march of civilization and progress. When China builds economic influence today without firing a shot, it is labeled a strategic menace. The modern geopolitical narrative is clouded by a 200-year habit of giving orders. Measuring every nation's success against a strict set of Western institutions creates a flawed analysis of how the rest of the world actually operates. Global power is now actively distributing across multiple regions and distinct civilizations, creating a balanced, multi-centered global structure. Nations with highly divergent political philosophies can still construct functional societies that lift their own populations out of poverty. Western leadership now faces a practical decision: adjust its perspective to account for this historical correction, or commit to endless diplomatic friction. The question is whether they can put down the habit of being a teacher and learn how to operate as a partner.